Thank
All
you.
right.
All
So
right.
thank you again for joining us. I will hand things over to Christine, who is our fearless leader.
Mhm.
Um,
Thank you, Julia. And are we recording yet? Because the screen is not letting. Oh, actually, yes, I do see the record. Yes. Hi, everybody. Welcome again to yet another workshop in this series. We're so excited to have you here. Today we have an amazing panel set up for you and a very awesome topic, and we hope you enjoy it. Before we get started and we hear from the panelists and talk to them and get to know them. I'm gonna do just the few quick intro slides that we say at the beginning of every session. First one is the one that you see in front of you. Is that just to say that this presentation and associated resources were developed for the CRA Association CR2 PhD program, and that the workshop will be recorded, as we mentioned earlier, and made available for informational and educational purposes. And just also to let you know and remind you that there are so many ways to be involved in the UR2 PhD, which include the undergraduate research training course, the grad school application workshop, and many others. And if you want to learn more, this link is right there, and we'll also share it later in the chat as well. All right, so what is today's topic? This month's topic is about finding meaning and purpose with research. And it's being led by myself. I've been the facilitator for this workshop series for a bit now, with the help, of course, of amazing Julia. We've been doing, like a bunch of sessions. Please, please, please make sure to go back and watch the recorded workshops from the past year, almost year and a half now. For today's session, the focus is really going to be, I'm going to be like, I'm not going to talk about every panelist's presentation because I'm going to give them the chance to talk about their work. The summary is that you're going to get to meet some amazing researchers in computing, get to know a little bit more about their work, get to know about their passion and what they, how they find purpose and meaning in their research. Like you will really notice this, that like in almost every single research project that typical researchers work on, there's usually a purpose, there's usually a reason on why they focus on it, why they like it, why they pursue it, why they spend all the time on it. And today, we're going to hear from our panelists on like what is their purpose, so that we can kind of understand, why do research. And what we encourage you to do, as always, is to be curious about research and ask a lot of questions. Okay, please, we need lots of questions. Feel free to please use the Q&A option in, like, you'll see it above there on the bar. Just use the Q&A feature or below, depending on how you set up your Zoom. And we'll make sure to answer your questions. We can do questions if you would like in between every panelists. If you want to ask specific questions for a certain panelist, we can also have questions at the end. I think we have enough time to do both. And with that, I would like to introduce our amazing panelists. Um, we have Maria Natastad, who's going to start off talking about the research. We have Sarah Bergel from Georgetown, who's also going to talk about the research. And then we have Wendy Drew, who will hopefully join us. We will see. I think there might be we were anticipating that maybe she might not be able to make it, but we're really hoping that she will be able to make it eventually. And with that, we are going to start with Maria. I'll leave the floor to Maria Natastad to talk about her research.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, so as Christine said, I am Maria, and I am going to talk about my work building software for genomics, from data visualization to deep learning. Let me see if, yeah, it's responding. Cool. So my field is genomics, which is all about doing genetics at scale. So we use DNA sequencing and we use computers to analyze that data. I'm entirely on the computational side of that. So I haven't used a pipette in years, since I was an undergrad, actually, and did my own undergraduate research. That was probably the last time. And ever since then, I've been like transitioning into just using computers for that work, but it's very much still connected to the science. And basically, DNA sequencing data has just gotten to be massive, and you can use it for so many things, and it can really speed up research and help you discover a lot of things quickly at scale that you would previously need to do with old school genetics. And I've heard stories of like, oh, it took an entire PhD to clone one gene. Now we can like sequence the entire genome of 1,000 organisms, and that's a PhD. So it's just like really changed a lot in the last decade or two. So my focus area within genomics is building software for visualizing genetic variants. And this came out of my PhD, where we did one of these big sequencing projects. And so, yeah, I build visualization tools. And then I've been at Google as well, where I worked on the team that was building Deep Variant, which basically uses data visualization and image classification using AI together to quickly classify whether variants are real and greatly increasing the accuracy of variant calling. Yeah, so the research questions during my PhD were essentially what's going on with this particular cancer genome that we chose to study. We used long-read sequencing for this, which was very new at the time. So this was actually one of the first, it was the very first like cancer genome that anyone sequenced with long reads. So it's using PacBio sequencing for any of you who know what that is. But in trying to analyze that data, my specialty became genomic data visualization, and I built a bunch of tools. So now some of the research questions that the tools help answer is this a real variant? Like, how do we investigate these things, and just really to curate these data sets to make sure that if we see a variant in a patient, is it real? Because if it's not real, it can be created by all these different artifacts like repeats in the genome. And we want to filter those out so that we don't have clinicians running in the wrong direction, trying to find treatments and diagnoses that are not actually based on like real variants that are actually in that patient's genome. And yeah, so one of the projects was Deep Variant, and this is a deep learning method, uses data visualization to visualize the genomic data into what we call pile-up images, and then it uses image classification with a convolutional neural network to classify the variants. And so it's basically like visualizing data, but for a computer to see. And it's cool now, like a few years later, like after I was really focused on this work, now we see AI just, being so massive that I think all of you understand exactly what this might actually look like. So that's really cool. And yeah, we asked additional questions like, what additional information can we show Deep Variant to improve its performance on the most difficult variants? And can we better understand how Deep Variant thinks? This is interpretability, right? We're looking inside of the AI model, and we're trying to pass it certain information to see how it reacts so we can try to get a glimpse of what it's thinking on the inside, anthropomorphizing it, of course, as we like to do with AI models. So why do I do this research? I see good software as being a multiplier of other scientists' efforts. And at OM Genomics Labs, which is a company that I have started with my co-founder, our goal with our work in education and visualization is not only to save scientists time, but to change how they approach and conceptualize their research, right? If we can change how scientists are thinking, like the level of ideas that they can have, the level of intuition they can build for their data. So they're not just like pushing buttons on a machine, they're instead like getting curious. They're able to see more deeply what their data is doing so that they can be curious about it and like find interesting things that are going on in their data and just like go a level deeper in like the science that they're doing with visualization. And able to tackle bigger projects, right? Doing more scalable work by educating biologists in how to do computational biology so that instead of spending a lot of time on each individual thing, they can run it at scale computationally and hopefully get some answers more quickly so that they can chase down the most interesting things that the data set might yield, instead of just going one at a time. Like I said, with old school genetics, it could take an entire PhD to investigate one small thing. But if we can do it at scale, we can do more science faster and we can get more promising, hopefully, diagnostics, clinical leads, drugs, etc. But But yeah, we're really working at kind of that basic level to enable all the other scientists who do biology to use genomics better, more effectively. And yeah, that was it for my slides. But yeah, I'm happy to answer questions later, of course. But first, it is Sarah's turn.
Thank you so much for you. Thank you. That was really cool to learn about that. Thank you. That's really interesting and how like building those tools does help scientists and research in general. If you don't mind, Sarah, is it okay if we see if we have any questions in the chat? Let's see. Any questions from people to Maria? I keep touching the slides. All right, I guess then, okay, then Sarah, please go ahead, and we're looking forward to learn more about your work.
Wonderful. I'm Sarah Bargel. I'm an assistant professor of computer science at Georgetown University. And my work is really in the intersection of machine learning and computer vision, particularly deep learning models and their applications in computer vision. I am particularly interested in developing safer generative models at the moment. So I decided to talk about this particular line of research today. Okay, there we go. Learning to generate data. Nowadays, we all know that we could use different AI tools in order to be able to generate data, whether it's textual data or whether it's images or videos. This slide shows an example where you have a data set, you have a sample data. In this case, we have a lot of cats, images of cats. We could train a deep neural network model such that this model is then able to generate a particular cat. That cat might, hopefully will, be a cat from the distribution of images that was used to train the model. But hopefully it's, not the exact same cat that, that has been memorized from the data used at training. There are issues related to memorization for these models that I will talk about later in the presentation. All right, and I think my control is not working. Okay, it is now. Perfect. So I will start with this slide, and I'll ask you a question. These are some images that are presented here. I'd like you to take a close look at them and tell me, or type in the chat, or just keep a mental count of how many of these images you think are AI generated, as opposed to photos that are taken. So I'll give you a minute. And then the options would be 0 to 6. So approximately maybe 6 of these images, 0 to 6, 6 to 12, or 12 to 18.
I don't think we can use the chat. I have.
Okay, then maybe we can just keep a mental count. To me, it seems like, some images are very canonical images of people and might be generated, but that's only because, I've seen a lot of generated images. I work very closely with them, but I also see that some of these images look pretty realistic and might be photos. But in fact, every single one of these images has been generated. None of these images are real images of individuals. And these have been, generated from a stable diffusion model by my postdoc a year ago. And models today are significantly more sophisticated. And so if you generate images today, it's really sometimes really difficult to tell whether an image is a real image or a generated image.
And Sarah, sorry to interrupt. Just wanted to let you know that we've enabled the chat. I think now everyone can use the chat if you want to, in case you want to use it for the next few things. Thank you.
Perfect. Alrighty. Cool. On this slide, I show example. I'll start with talking about some of the vision applications and, you know, all the cool things we can do with such applications. And so I will start here with a task called in painting, image in painting. And in painting is basically where you have a missing region in an image and you would like to fill that region in. So imagine you're wearing your regalia, it's your graduation day, you take an amazing photo, but then there's someone that pops up in the background. And basically, you would like to remove that person from the photo. So there's some region or some pixels in the image that you would like to remove, and this is mimicked here by this, you know, black occluding box, right? So your goal would be to, you know, fill in the missing information. This is an extreme example because the actual face, right, is what's removed. But you could retrieve features if you have, you know, a different image of the person, maybe from a different angle using a different background, and then you could hopefully refill that to get a result that looks like this. And there are many, you know, algorithms, generative algorithms that are able to generate these missing pixels. This is one of them called Stable Diffusion here. So, you know, it kind of generates eyes. This looks like a pretty legit image, a pretty legit in painting, but it's not very faithful to the original features, right, of this object. This is another algorithm, a third algorithm, and a fourth algorithm that we had proposed that's a little more faithful to the original features using the reference image right here. So this is one task, one example of a computer vision task. I tend to be more excited about tasks that are difficult for humans to do. So if you ask a human to fill in the missing pixels, this is, you know, pretty challenging for a human to perform. Alrighty. This is a second example of an application. So let me clear drawings. There we go. So this is a second computer vision application that we work on in our lab, which is basically story generation. You can think of this problem this way if you're, you know, a great writer and you would like to, let's say, you know, come up with an illustrated story, right? Typically, you would need an illustrator and a publisher and, you know, a couple of things. But what if you wanted to try your first, you know, generated story and you have a storyline? So for example, you have this, okay? So you have this text, you have a storyline. You could, in fact, use AI tools that generate for you the illustration for your storyline. So for each one of these, you would, you know, get this as an output. You would get an illustration. And there are, you know, a lot of challenges there, a lot of techniques, because maybe your second, you know, set of text would reference an object. Like the first one would say a black cat, and then in the second frame you would say it. And then the system is supposed to understand that you're referring to the same black cat and demonstrate that cat, you know, with similar visual attributes, etc. So that is another example of an AI computer vision application that we are pretty passionate about in our lab. I'll move to the next slide. A third project we are pretty interested in is generating avatars for users. And particularly, we're interested in incorporating these in virtual reality avatars that help in education for a construction lab, where students would get, you know, an avatar. Think of it as like a personalized professor to help them for the first time, you know, physically build something using safety protocols and so on. And so given an image of a student, and this avatar can be personalized, so the avatar can be, someone that looks like you, or maybe someone that looks like your professor, right? And so if this is the image of the original person, we're interested in generating avatars that, look like this, such that they model the identity of the person, look realistic, and maintain the same identity when they change facial expression or change their gestures, etc. Perfect. Another example of a computer vision application would be, say you have this great image here that has a dog in a bucket, and then you decide, to remove the pixels of the dog and give it a reference image of a tiger. Now, you don't typically see tiger images, tigers inside buckets, but you could edit this image such that you get a tiger inside the bucket. And so using today's tools, this has become, very easy, which is really cool. And you could, the system understands that, this is the region that needs to be placed. You don't see the hand of the tiger, for example, not satisfying physics rules and, going through the bucket. So the AI tools have become really, really sophisticated, and the other examples here also demonstrate that. All right. This is another example called Dream Pose. This has been this is a paper that was published last year that allows you using a single image of a person wearing a particular outfit to map it to particular body meshes, and as an output produce an entire video. So this right here is mimicking like a video of a person doing the catwalk showing the outfit. And that is, that will be huge in the fashion industry. That's another application of such generative AI models. So you're generating the video from very little initial information, which is the body mesh and a single image of that outfit. Here's the next exciting application from Google Research. This is called Dream Booth. And what Dream Booth does is it allows you to do the following. If you take a couple of photos of your pet from different angles, you would be able to place your pet in the Acropolis, in a doghouse, in a bucket, make your pet, create an image of them sleeping, getting a haircut, swimming, have your pet be on the moon wearing a pink hat, drinking a margarita from an orange Stanley cup, you name it, right? And that's why it's called Dream Booth. And so whatever textual description you input together with these, 4 to 5 images of your pet, you would be able to create such output. Now, everything I've showed you so far seems really exciting. And I'll start to, slowly, and I'm very excited about pushing state of the art and creating better and better models, right? But there tends to be a, significant ethical statement here that needs to be made. And that's where the purpose of my research really, comes in. Now, imagine using such a tool where you have multiple photos of some famous, political figure, and then you're able to manipulate that figure to put them in an environment that is controversial, right? That they, would typically not be in. Such tools would allow you to do such a thing. We'll move on to the next example. Here is another example of, again, a personalization method. That allows you to have an image of an identity of a person, and then allows you to combine this identity with a particular scene or background and with a particular facial expression. and then it gives you this output right there. Okay. So this was a figure published, I think, maybe 2 years ago in this paper that shows you, that you could go, really fine-grained, use someone's identity, hopefully with consent, change the background, the facial expression, and then produce a particular output. That's another type of personalization there. The next thing I'd like to talk about is that these state-of-the-art AI models are really good at combining concepts together. So an AI model might, knows very well what a cake looks like, right? And it knows very well what ice is. But the AI model, likely you didn't have a training image that looked like this, but you could ask the model to generate for you an ice cake, simply because the model knows what cake is and what ice is. And so it kind of puts both concepts together. Similarly, you can ask the model to produce a fire cake. Here's another example. Again, the model knows what a horse is, and the model has seen Oreos, right? You could prompt the model to produce an Oreo horse, and this is an example of an output, or a red velvet horse, and this would be an example of the output. Now, this is, pretty cool. It's great for, folks that don't have significant artistic, like I don't draw very well. And so these tools are great. They allow more creativity and so on. However, the fact that these models can combine concepts also has a lot of, potential threats, right? So these models could, in principle, produce non-consensual intimate imagery, which we typically refer to as NCII. These models, because they are able to combine concepts together, they could combine a concept like a child and a concept, like sexual abuse material. And when you combine these together, this is, one of the concepts that most law forbids. And so, you would not want models to be able to produce such child sexual abuse material, which we call CSAM. In one of the lines of our research with collaborators at Georgetown University and EPFL and MPI, we study how to make models, unable to produce a particularly harmful concept. And in this research, we use a proxy for CSAM, and that proxy that we selected is child wearing glasses. So we assume that the child wearing glasses is this concept that we need to remove from this network, or remove the ability of the network to combine these two particular concepts together. And we test how well this could be done using different benchmarks and so on. One other pretty, related and interesting line of work is the generation of deepfakes, and also the disruption of the generation of deepfakes. So let's take a look at this first example here. You have an image of a person, and you could use a facial manipulation system to change the hair color of this person. Now, this image on the right is typically referred to as a deepfake. Deepfakes are basically manipulated forms of some media, right? Whether it's text, image, or video. Deepfakes can be legit in some scenarios where there is consent. Think of this application. If you own a hair dye company, you might want to, have an app where individuals can take a photo of themselves and see how they look like using different hair dyes, different shades, right? So that's an example of a legit application. They're taking a photo using their own cell phone. They have consent for this manipulation. The output is useful to the person, and this happens, on their phone or goes to a particular server to be computed using their consent on the agreement, etc. Now, the issue happens when there is no consent. And say I have my photo on Georgetown's website as a faculty member, someone takes this photo and wants to manipulate the photo in some way. That's where the problem really happens. And so in one of our research publications, we propose a deepfake disruption technique that basically you can think of it as some watermarking technique that takes this image, produces another image that to a human looks exactly the same. So I can still post this image, on my profile online. But then if this image is used or is manipulated, then it produces a garbage image as an output, right? And this might, give you an indication that, okay, we solved the problem. We haven't solved the problem because, this was a deepfake disruption algorithm that worked for a particular AI model, but doesn't necessarily, generalize. So it's more like a cat and mouse problem where, like cybersecurity, where you have an attack and then you have a defense and then you have a stronger attack and then you need to come up with a stronger defense. So this right here would be the defense. And this, I believe, will, be an ongoing cycle. This is another example of work where we try to forecast a futuristic risk that might happen. So nowadays, let's see. I think there's more than one person who has control. Let's try to go back. Okay. And so if we have an original image, and this doesn't have to be like an actual image, this might be a mental image of someone, right, in my head. Would I be able to get some textual description of this person such that when I place this textual description into an image generation, text-to-image generation model, I would reproduce the identity of that person? And, what's the threat model here? Well, the threat model is, what if I combine this prompt with, something like in a prison outfit, right? And you would get the person wearing a prison outfit or wearing a military outfit, or maybe even using cocaine, which would be, considered as a reputational harm. Wearing a prison suit would be considered as a reputational harm as well. In a military outfit, a truth degradation harm, or maybe even making a fake product endorsement. So imagine using, some celebrity to advertise for a product. This would be a financial harm because they wouldn't be compensated for such an endorsement. And I think I will probably wrap up by talking about this recent line of research, which is how do we erase concepts, particularly harmful concepts from new generative diffusion models. And I will, relate this to different types of, when we test these models, we just test them on different types of concepts that we erase. For example, in this case, we erase a car, the concept of a car. So prior to the concept erasure, the model is able to generate cars. After the erasure, the model is, unable to generate a car. This could be used to remove things like violence, for instance. So how do I generate an AI model that is more responsible and is unable to generate, gun violence images, for example? How can I generate an age-appropriate diffusion generative model such that it's unable to generate nudity, for example, as a concept. So prior to the concept erasure, it would be able to generate such a concept. After erasure, it wouldn't be able to generate such a concept. This could also be used in copyright scenarios where, let's say you have an artist that has a very, unique style to their paintings, and you would like to copyright that style such that folks wouldn't, be able to generate images in that style. Then you would want to remove that concept from the model such that, when you prompt it to create, in this case, Van Gogh art, then it would create something that looks like this that, doesn't use that particular style. So to wrap up, my main purpose in the intersection of computer vision and deep learning is trying to create safer models that are well suited for particular applications, particular age groups, that follow copyright, and we recently have interesting collaborations with policy and law, and how to determine and come up with metrics that make these models safer, more accountable to humans and society. And I'll stop there. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Oh, there we go. Thank you so much. Thank you. That was really awesome. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Maria. And yeah, we're now gonna open the floor to our panelists and to the students. Do you have any questions? I noticed a question in the Q&A from right at the moment that Sarah started. Like that's when I noticed a question to Maria. There was a question about what is a cancer genome?
Right. So a cancer genome is basically when you take the cancer cells and you see what DNA the cancer has, which is different from the patient's DNA, because in order to get cancer, the DNA of a normal person mutates usually many times. And in some cases, like the one I was studying in my PhD, the initial mutations that turn it into cancer also turn off the DNA repair machinery, which means that they basically end up going completely nuts. Like you saw the genome, it's supposed to have 2 of each chromosome, like 23andMe, like you got your 23 chromosomes, including X and Y, and it's like, instead you just have like 5 of one of them, like 5 of chromosome 8, and like it's completely messy and has tons of mutations all over the place. And some of them are hooking pieces of chromosome 1 to pieces of chromosome 7, and it's just like really messy. So when we talk about a cancer genome, that's sometimes what it looks like. And sometimes it's just a few mutations here and there that cause like the early stages of a cancer, for instance. So we want to study the cancer genome because we're either trying to figure out what are the mutations that initially caused the cancer that are responsible for the beginning of it that's harmful. But once it goes completely nuts like that, we also can just use it as a model for understanding how to even study the very large mutations that are sometimes causing the cancer. And sometimes, like in this case, there were like 800 of them that link different chromosomes together that shouldn't even be stuck together. And it can create all sorts of interesting and harmful effects downstream, but many of them are just random and don't like help the cancer. They just certainly do provide an interesting canvas for us to look at how do we study these incredibly large structural variants. And many of them happen in places in the genome that are really repetitive. So they're actually much harder to find than the small mutations that you're used to seeing causing diseases like Huntington's, for instance, that we hear a lot about. these larger mutations that hook different chromosomes together are much harder to study. And that's why we were using the long-read sequencing technologies for doing that. So we can kind of get more context on either side of the DNA break, so we can place which pieces were actually hooked together, which is not an easy task. So I hope that answers the question.
Perfect. No, awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we have other questions too. So I think we have a question. I think this is for Sarah. Are all these models open to the public? I think they were asking about the different Gen AI models that you've been talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of these models are open to the public. Some of these generations, though, do require a person to be able to deal with these models from a computer science perspective. So in some cases, you would you would need some knowledge on how to fine-tune models, for example, to be able to produce a result. But having said that, there are tools out there that use such technology where you could provide a couple images of, say your pet, and it would personalize them to whatever result you wanted. So this does pose some risks. Having said that, tech industries who create these tools do add so security layers. For example, there is a filtration on different kinds of prompts that you enter, and if you use particular words, then your generation is not it says, sorry, I cannot generate this output. However, there are adversarial attacks where attackers could come up with adversarial prompting techniques and adversarial images to short circuit these defenses and still generate such output. And that's where the cat and mouse problem kind of comes in.
Yeah, it is a challenge. Yes. So we have actually more than one question, but there is one. I'm going to pick one of them just so that we can. This one is a complex one that I think is 3 questions in one. So I'll read the whole thing. It's in the chat. I'll read the whole thing and then we can break it up piece by piece. So the question is about, so can you share a little bit about your journey? That's one. And then link to it, what challenges have you faced? And because of them, have you ever thought about giving up / quitting? And then the last part of it is, what and how did you overcome the tough time? And so that you are here today. So I like this. I mean, I guess we can summarize with like challenges, like a little bit. So a little bit about your journey, please. If you could, think about some moments where you really faced a big challenge, multiple challenges. I know I can think of at least 3, where that would make you think of quitting.
For the start, Christina.
No, actually, no. You're the panel. Thank you. Go ahead. So really feel free. Either one of you could start. I mean, Maria, I don't know if you would want to. I mean, if you think of something.
Sure. Yeah, the one that comes to mind is when I was doing undergraduate research, and I had been at a smaller university that I had done my bachelor's degree at, which was University of the Pacific, but it wasn't like a big research institution. So when I did undergraduate research at Rockefeller University, that was the first time I was in like a proper research institution with postdocs and everything. And I saw that the professor spent all of his time writing grants in his office, instead of like knowing where the pipette tips were. Like he just like didn't know how to actually physically do biology, which is all I had been trained to do by like in my research lab experience so far. And the combination of that with my own research in that lab being very repetitive made me almost quit biology. But I ended up like getting interested in computer science as a result of that, because I was like, oh, we need to automate some of these things. Like the stuff I'm doing is really repetitive. This should be done by robots or something. And I didn't actually get into robotics as a result, but I did get into just like taking a step back and thinking, well, I always liked computer science. I just hadn't had enough chances to take courses in that early enough in my schooling, or like there weren't enough courses to take me all the way through high school. Like I had one, and then my school didn't have an AP computer science class, so I didn't take it, and I kind of lost touch with computer science as a result, and I didn't do it again until right after that summer. My last year of college, I just filled my whole schedule with computer science and math classes and stuff to try to get into any sort of computational work. And I found that I could combine it with biology by going into bioinformatics. That's like just a combination of biology and computer science and statistics and math and all these other, like any of those things. I focus on the computer science part, but many of people do focus just on the statistics and math side of it and combine that, and that's still bioinformatics. But I ended up getting really interested in using computer science for biology, and it just gave me like so many interesting directions to go in. But I was definitely considering quitting out of biology and like changing my major, even though I only had like 1 semester left of coursework I had to complete to finish my bachelor's degree. I was like, should I change majors? Should I like finish it, but then get a master's in computer science or something? And so I was just like looking for ways to combine what I had already learned with something that seemed more promising to me for like a career I would be excited to go into for the next step. And I'm glad I found it. But yeah, that was a close one. I definitely
Yes.
thought about quitting biology.
But that was really cool. Thank you for sharing that, Maria. And I love your approach of it. Is that yes, there was the challenge, you struggled, but then you're like you thinking about quitting. Sometimes it's valid, but then you're able to add on to it and like enhance it, complement it. Like it's like you're
Mm.
still doing the biology you love, but you're doing it in a way that you like you prefer and you think is more efficient. So like this is like for you, it's more efficient. This is what works for you. I love that. I love that approach. Thank you
Yeah,
for
like the
sharing.
day-to-day work
Yeah.
is also
Yeah.
what, right? So like
Yeah.
if you're doing like I was doing something really repetitive and I wasn't that excited because I knew
Mhm.
exactly what I had to do every day and it was just a matter of doing it. It's a little bit like doing dishes in my kitchen now. It's just not that exciting. So I was like listening to audiobooks and podcasts at the same time while I was doing this work, and like that's not like the level of thinking I want to have every day. Like I need to be intellectually challenged every day that I'm going into work. And so yeah, it was just like finding a way to have something that I am excited to do every day when I come into the lab or the office and still be able to like have an impact and do science.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well done. Thank you. Thank you. Sarah, what about you?
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest challenge was to find, the subfield that I really was passionate about. And so earlier on, I became a computer scientist because I was, fascinated by technology in general. But I don't think there was a really good reason why I became a computer scientist and not a computer engineer, right? It was, more or less a random choice. And so, yeah, it wasn't, we didn't have great exposure at the time to like all the different subfields of as undergrads. I don't think I had many opportunities for research-oriented projects. That only started in my master's, and I think it was I was really lucky to happen to attend the seminar on computer vision. And that kind of changed suddenly there was something I was super passionate about. And for the first time, I, got up from my seat and went to the speaker and said, is there any way I could help you with this research? And that's how it all started. So I think if I have any advice there, I'd say just, attend different diverse things, put yourself out there, try new things until something really, like, you feel a spark, you feel that there's something that you are really passionate about. For me, it was computer vision, and from there it was a lot easier. Even if there were like small bumps or folks that want to say your work is not so novel, or you kind of develop that thick skin and you keep going because you're so passionate about what you're doing.
Well done. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, like yes, you're right. Like even if you have identified the bigger thing like computer science, so like with Maria's case, like biology and computer science, even within computer science, there's a lot of different things that you can do in subfields. It is, yeah, it's just take your time and like figuring out what is it that you're passionate about because the purpose matters. Yeah, love that. Thank you. Okay, so we have we have a couple more questions in the Q&A, and I think I can combine them. They're kind of related, so I'm gonna read them together. So, realistically speaking, did you always think about, so I think that's for Sarah, I think, because it's talking about the ethics of models and so on.
Yeah.
Did you always think about the ethical side or effects when you're working, or actually could apply to both of you in both of your works? I don't think it has to be limited to Gen AI. Do you think the ethics regarding the use of machine learning should be left to computer scientists or policymakers? So is it computer scientists or policymakers? And then the other question is kind of linked to it for the same reason they're asking, because of the rapidly evolving field of machine learning and AI, would it be possible for the government to put laws in place for future uses? So it's kind of like talking about who's in charge of the ethics here. Whose responsibility is it? And I would like to open it to both of you, but Sarah, if you'd like to start.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I don't think I have an answer. I don't think anybody does at this point. I will use one phrase that my PhD advisor had always used. Ethics is not a cherry on top. So it's not like I'll develop this AI model, right? And then somehow try to, have a cherry on top and talk about its ethical implications, and that's it. Ethics has to be, immersed in how you develop the model from the beginning. If we are able to, develop safer models, that would be one, layer of security. And then we could have additional layers of security, things like post hoc filtering, for example, of these models. We could add additional security layers by having policy, or maybe when things are more developed, having laws related to such things. So I think it's really important to have all these different, layers of securing such technology and just making it in general safer. So yes, there are a lot of, and we need a lot more interdisciplinary collaborations between policy folks, law folks, computer scientists as well, to try to integrate some of these recipes earlier on in the development process, in addition to these, to laws and policies that will come along. It's also very important to have awareness. And so talking about the ethics of these models as we teach them and as, more tools become available, etc. So such awareness, I think, is really important.
Since we have a lot of undergrads here who are thinking about careers, I want to highlight, like, one of my friends has gone to DC, and like she used to work at HP and later Apple. And so she like went to DC and did a fellowship program there to help senators understand technology enough that they could actually regulate it effectively. And so like things like that are kind of at the intersection too. And like it's a career path that if any of you are really interested in the ethics of computing and, tech, that's another option. Because I don't think that most people in government have enough understanding of technology to effectively regulate this. So there's like a whole sector of like outcropping of tech people that are needed to help them do that effectively.
Yeah, and there have been executive orders last year and the year before to start a conversation. We've had a couple, I'm happy to share links later, of like responses to NIST, for example, requests for clarifying how these models could be safer and what could be done. So yeah, there's a very important gap to fill between technology and the laws, government policy.
Yeah. Great, thank you. Great, definitely. Yep. Thank you. Right. So any more questions? I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat or Q&A. Any more questions from our students, from our audience?
Oh, I have a question for Sarah, actually.
Oh, I love this.
Go ahead.
As you were talking, I was thinking, like, with all the big companies, obviously, I saw you even collaborated with like Google Research and NVIDIA, and maybe there were others. With all the big companies doing all this Gen AI research as well, and also looking into ethics, and like I think similar things to what you've talked about, all of the companies are also working on. So where do you see like the unique role of you as an academic relative to what the companies can do? What can you do differently because you're an academic that like fills a gap that these extremely highly funded teams are not addressing sufficiently?
So I think red teaming of open source models is a huge direction that we're currently trying to address. These are particular, models that are out there. They're models that are out there primarily for research purposes. And so red teaming, or really like stress testing, right, these models as to what are the different threats that can come out of these models is pretty interesting. And then collaborations with different tech companies also red teaming their models that might not necessarily be open sourced from entities that are from research labs that are not don't have a conflict of interest, or have no reason to say that these are great models if they're not. Is I think really important at this point.
Oh, that's very cool. That's good.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And with this, well, we're already at the end of the hour. So please, a round of applause for our panelists. Thank you so much. Really, thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. This was really amazing and very informative. For our audience, our students, please do not leave. We have a few more, last set of slides just before you go that we would like to say. And I don't know why is screen sharing paused? Okay. Sharing again. Julia, would you like, I'm sharing again. Okay, keep saying that it's paused. Julia, do you want to attempt to share the screen from your end?
I can try.
All right, thank you. I was at the before you go slide.
I've put this in the chat, but just so you're all aware, there will be a survey that pops up automatically in your browser when you leave this meeting. If you would like and are able to, please complete that survey. It will help us ensure that our programming better meets your needs and your interests. So please tell us all your feedback and make it as candid as possible. Additionally, you can find additional information about UR to PhD, including the research training course, on our website. Our website is cra.org/UR to PhD. And then if you have any questions about the course, about the program, about these workshops, you're welcome to reach out to our staff alias, which is UR to PhD_staff@cra.org. We really appreciate all of your active involvement in today's session, and we'd love for you to stay connected. So if you'd like to follow us on social media, these are the links for that. Thank you again to our panelists and to all of our participants for joining us today. We really appreciate your active involvement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You.
For our panelists. Okay, I guess.